there is a fitra nature, which is to recognize that God exists, to recognize that there's something outside of myself. But the intellect is not sufficient enough to understand God as God wants to be understood. And this is where we get revelation. So the next object of faith, right? Amantu billahi wa bi kutubihi. There's books. There are dispensations. So the books are dispensations from God in which God explains to His creation what He wants them to understand about Him. So from the Muslim perspective, every group has had this reminder. And it's interesting that it's called a reminder. These books are called reminders. The Torah was a reminder. The Gospel was a reminder. If the Vedic scriptures were revealed books originally, they were reminders. If Buddha was a prophet, he was a reminder. Bringing people reminders, taking them back to their true nature, which is to understand God. That the human being was created to understand God. And God is the highest abstraction for the human being. We have nothing higher in terms of abstraction. The human being does have a concept of God. Even the atheist has a concept of God. So the intellect has the ability to conceptualize really that which cannot be conceptualized. It's paradoxical, but this is the power of the intellect. Somebody was telling me about the most sophisticated computer in the world that has the brain of the same intelligence as a flatworm, right? And I said, I just said, that's amazing. He said, that's not amazing. This is amazing. You see, the human intellect is what's amazing. The human intellect is phenomenal in its capacity to imagine, to conceive, to conceptualize, to idealize. I mean, this is something very extraordinary. And the Muslims see it as a gift. The aql is a gift. It's the crown of creation. And a gift should be used for that which it was intended, according to the Islamic tradition. Mm-hmm.
What about emotion?
Emotion?
Because intellect can be something that is clear, that is concise, that is unfeeling, insensitive.
Right. Okay, we get into definitions and semantics. From a Muslim point of view, the intellect is not really what is conceived in the West to be intellect. In the West, the intellect is really seen as this rational, analyzing, critical. I mean, the kind of height of intellectual prowess is seen in the scientist, in a sense. Whereas for the Muslim point of view, the intellect relates really to perception. And compassion might be the necessary thing to be perceived. In other words, that the intellect... What's that?
You're saying it's all encompassing.
I think so. I think it's a broader understanding of intellect. In other words, the intellect really is that which sees things as they truly are. And when I asked one of my teachers what intellect was, he said it's a light that God puts in the heart in which people are able to see things as they truly are. Right? So the intellect is an organ of perception. And if it perceives things as they truly are, then the emotive faculty within the individual might be stimulated by the perception of something as it truly is. So if I see somebody suffering and my intellect understands truly what that means, then empathy emerges. So that is part of the function of the intellect. You see, so the intellect would be necessary to, I mean, if you look at it in a tri-brain type thing, I'm going to go into that just about the nafs. All right. So some of these questions I will get to, and if you want, just hold them, just so I can keep.
The flow.
Huh?
Keep the flow.
Trying to move along. The books. So the books are dispensations. Now, the Muslims do not know how many books there were, but we are told to believe by the Quran with absolute certainty in 4 books. The first one is called the Torah. And the Torah, generally, most of the Muslims believe it relates to the first 5 books of the Bible, right? So you'd have Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Numbers, right? Those would be generally considered the first 5 books. Now, it's important that the Muslims do not the book that, the Bible is collected over 900 years. From the Quranic worldview, there were alterations, and we talked about that already. So when the Muslims say they believe in the Torah, it does not necessarily mean everything that exists in the Torah today. So for instance, stories that would denigrate the prophets, the idea that Lot, for instance, slept with his daughters, things like that are anathema to the Muslims. They really would not accept that as being from the revelation. And these are differences between the religious teachings, but that is the Muslim worldview. The gospel would be the gospel of Jesus, gospel in singular, not the 4 accounts, but a gospel, one gospel called the Injil. And then the Zabur, which is generally believed to be the Psalms of David. And then finally the Furqan, or the Criterion. And it's called the Furqan in relation to the other 3 books because it's seen as the discriminating book. In other words, it lets us know what is still valid from those other books and what is no longer valid. This is how the Muslims view the Quran, that it is a book, it is a criterion for judging other traditions. And the Quran says that it's muhaymin alayh, that it is literally an overseer of the other traditions. So that, now, the books themselves are brought by messengers, which is the next. We have to believe in messengers. And the idea of a messenger, a Rasul, is somebody that is sent from God to human beings to give them a message from God, to explain God's intentions or will towards the human being. Both the books and the messengers are understood to be sent by God.